Good morning, all of you.
Good morning, sir.
So, dear students, my today's class, I am going to teach you a new chapter. The name of the chapter is Birth in your snapshot, written by A.J. Cronin. So, A.J. Cronin, Cronin. Now, just we will see the introduction. In this excerpt from The Citadel, Andrew Manson, newly out of medical school, has just begun his medical practice as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in a small Welsh mining town of Blanley. As he is returning from a disappointing evening with Kristen, the girl he loves, he is met by Joe Morgan. Joe and his wife, who had been married nearly 20 years ago, are expecting their first child. Now, this is going to be a very interesting story in which you will see that there is a doctor who is working as an apprentice to a very experienced and senior doctor. Now, this doctor, he is not an expert. He is not an expert. He is an apprentice. He is a new doctor. He is new. He is doing his internship under an experienced one. Now, he will encounter a very exceptional case. Okay, and then let us see what is happening, what will happen in the story. Now, though it was nearly midnight, the story begins with this. See, all problems begin at midnight only, isn't it? Any untoward incident you will see, any problems, the troubles will creep up during the night. Daytimes, things will be fine. So, though it was nearly midnight, when Andrew reached Bringover, he found Joe Morgan waiting for him. So the character is Andrew Manson. Andrew Andrew Manson. Now Joe Morgan. Next character is Joe Joe Morgan is our next character. Waiting for him, walking up and down with short steps between the closed surgery and the entrance to the house. At the sight of him, the burly driller's face expressed relief. Now, Joe Morgan was very relentlessly was waiting for Andrew Manson to appear. Andrew Manson is the doctor whom Joe Morgan wanted to pay a visit. So, doctor, I am glad to see you. Now, he expressed his glee, he expressed his happiness in seeing the doctor. I've been back and forward here this last hour. The Mrs. wants ye before time too. Now he says, the Mrs. wants ye. My wife wants you, and somewhere, so before time too. Now she needs you before time. It's not that, just at the 11th hour you show yourself. No. Now she will be very comforted by your presence. So your presence will comfort her. Your presence will comfort her. If you can manage to be before time, it is good for all of us. So please come and handle the situation. Ah, doctor, I'm glad to see you. So we saw this. Andrew abruptly recalled from the contemplation of his own affairs, told Morgan to wait. Now, Andrew himself was not very intact that day. You understand? He was not very intact. He was not very composed because he was going through the trauma of his girlfriend who had left him. The trauma what he was suffering was that his girlfriend had left him. It is not mentioned in the story why, but the story begins with that mention that Andrew's girlfriend had left him and he was not feeling good about it. So he was still in that hangover, he was still in that trauma when Manson had requested him to be available in his house. So Andrew just asked him, "You please give me a little time, give me some space to, you know, give me some time to compose myself, and then definitely I will be coming to your place." So he went into the house for his bag. Then together they set out for number 12, Blana Terrace. So the address where he has to go was Blana Terrace, isn't it? He went in his house, he reached for his bag, he took his bag, and then they had set for Morgan's house. The night air was cool and deep with quite mystery. The night air was cool. You understand? Usually, in the night you won't find sun. When there is sun, then only the temperature, the area is warm, isn't it? Night time is usually cooler. So, usually, so perceptive. Andrew now felt dull and listless. So, otherwise, Andrew used to be very buoyant. Buoyant is the right word, BouYant. But now he was very dull. This night Andrew was very dull. He had no premonitions that the night call would prove unusual. He had no premonition, he didn't have that sixth sense to guess. You understand? No pre-warning. He never had a pre-warning that this night will be different from other nights. Okay, no one told that. There was no one to warn him or no one to tell him about the future events that are going to come. Still less that it would influence his whole future in Blanley. But then this is going to change his entire future in Blanley. This particular night, and he didn't had a premonition of it. Premonition, I'm sure you are understanding the word. You understand? Pre-warning. The two men walked in silence. They didn't have much to talk. They did not have much to talk. They went in silence until they reached the door of number 12. Then Joe drew up short. And then, since it was Joe's house, he drew up short. He showed the way to the doctor to reach his wife's room. So, "I will not come in," he said. So he just showed the way. He himself did not accompany the doctor. He just showed him the way. And he said, his voice showed signs of strain. "But man, I know you'll do well for us." So the doctor said, "Doctor, I believe you. I won't go with you inside. You please handle the case all on yourself, all on your own, all on your own. And I'm sure we all have faith on you and you will handle it well." Inside, a narrow stair led up to the bedroom, clean but poorly furnished. See, furnished word goes for, in foreign countries, rooms are, decorated with furnitures. So if the furnitures are not either in good taste or not enough furnitures are there, what there should be, so they say it is poorly furnished. Or if the taste in the furniture is not good, if the table, chairs, or they are not good, nicely maintained, so the expression will go as poorly furnished. And lit only by an oil lamp. So the soft light of the oil lamp, the yellow light, it was the only glow, the only light was that of an oil lamp, which was not very bright as well. Here, Mrs. Morgan's mother, a tall, grey-haired woman of nearly 70, and the stout elderly midwife waited beside the patient, watching Andrew's expression as he moved about the room. So, then in this room, apart from the patient, there were another two ladies. Apart from the patient, Andrew was able to find two more ladies. One was the midwife. Midwife is referred to that woman who helps in the childbirth. At the time of childbirth, in villages they call daima, dai, it is like that. So that lady was there, midwife, and uh, Mrs. Morgan. Mrs. Morgan was there. Who was Mrs. Morgan? Huh. Morgan's wife. No, Mrs. Morgan was Mrs. Morgan's mother. Mrs. Morgan's mother was there. Mrs. Morgan's mother, a tall grey woman of nearly 70, and the stout elderly midwife waited beside the patient. So, Mrs. Morgan's mother was there. Mrs. Morgan means the lady who was pregnant, who was expecting the child. She was Mrs. Morgan. Her mother, usually, it so happens that mothers, they come to, comfort their daughters at the time of childbirth. So it happens. Watching Andrew's expression as he moved about the room. So both of them were watching Andrew's expression as he was walking around the room. He was very impatient, Andrew. Let me make you a cup of tea, Dr. Bash, said the farmer quickly after a few moments. So, who was the farmer? The midwife. Okay, in a sentence, if two things are mentioned, now farmer is the first word and latter is the second. So, here in this sentence, first mention was of Mrs. Morgan's mother and then the midwife. So, the farmer said that may I prepare tea for you. So here farmer refers to Mrs. Andrew's mother. Her name was mentioned prior to midwives. Andrew smiled faintly. He saw that the old woman, wise in experience, realized there must be a period of waiting, that she was afraid he would leave the case, saying he would return later. So Andrew smiled faintly. Andrew smiled. And then he saw the old woman, wise in experience. A midwife, she might have helped in many a childbirths. Okay. So realized there must be a period of waiting. The experienced lady just realized, okay, she had helped in many a childbirths, many a cases. So she understood that it will take time for, for childbirth. So she was afraid he would leave the case, saying he would return later. So sometimes, what happens? The doctor will realize that it will take some time. So doctor will, take it as an excuse that, okay, I'll be coming in a while, and she didn't wanted that doctor should leave, the older lady. Midwife understood it's time taking, but Mrs. Andrews' mother also understood that it will take some time. So she wanted the doctor to remain. She was finding excuses to entertain the doctor. So doctor, while he will have tea, he will have some dinner, so he won't feel like leaving. Don't fret, mother, I'll not run away. So doctor said he understood the real motive why he was being asked for tea. Alright. So all of us can hear the ambulance. Who knows? The ambulance also may be rushing for any childbirth case in the locality, isn't it? Anyway, so Andrew smiled faintly. We saw that paragraph. Now next is, don't fret, don't be nervous. Okay, mother, I will not run away. So doctor said, Andrew said, see, don't be scared. I'm not going to leave you in the middle. I won't ditch you. Leaving someone in the middle means ditching someone. Okay, I won't ditch you. I won't betray you. I will not betray you. Alright. So down in the kitchen, he drank the tea which she gave him, and he accepted her offer. He drank the tea, overwrought as he was. Now see, doctor himself was going through a psychological trauma. What he was going through? Psycholo, psychological. Okay, psychological trauma. That he may be very close to a girl, and the girl, she break up with the doctor. So He himself was overwrought by his emotional turmoil. Emotional turmoil. So, overwrought as he was, he knew he could not snatch even an hour's sleep if he went home. So, doctor himself realized that if he goes home to catch up on little sleep, he will not be able to catch up even an hour of sleep, because he himself will be disturbed, he is already disturbed, and he may get a call again from Joe Morgan, because anything may happen any moment and he may be called. So he knew too that the case here would demand all his attention, and he realized that, see, people are anxious and he has promised. He has to be true to his promise. He has to stand true to his promise. His promise should not be like writing on running water. His promise should not be like writing on running water. If people make promises by writing on running water, means they are not true to their words. So it is not the case with this doctor. He knew too that the case here would demand all his attention. A queer lethargy of spirit came upon him. He decided to remain until everything was over. So he felt very lethargic. He might be feeling sleepy, he might be feeling tired, he might be, emotionally tense, but still he decided not to leave until everything is not settled, until the childbirth has not taken place, until he has not stabilized the patient. The expression is until he has not stabilized the patient, he was not willing to leave. He decided in his mind. An hour later, he went upstairs again. An hour later, so he waited in the kitchen. He took tea. Somehow he whiled away his time by taking tea. What did he do? He whiled away his time. The expression is whiling away. Okay, you whiled away your time loitering in the streets and you did not go to school. So the expression you see, whiling away. So he whiled away in the kitchen by having tea, and an hour later he went upstairs again. See, there is a nice expression, an hour. You know why it is an hour? See, we use an only before A, E, I, O, U. But why here we are using an when the word is beginning from H? See, grammar is all about, it's not only the rules for arrangement of words in a sentence to make the sentence meaningful. It's not only about that. Grammar is the science of pronunciation also. You understand? Grammar is all about how to pronounce also. It should be tasteful. Now see, here H is silent. Though H is present, the H sound is not emitted while speaking. No one says hour. We say hour, an hour later, and there's no hour. You know the hour? Hour. So H is, so here hour. You understand? So it goes like that. But a university, a UNI, we never say an university, a university degree. You did not get an university degree, no, A. Because here, though it is U, the pronunciation part, the sound emitted is of Y. We say a university. You check it out. You can do that. Google what it is. Google means Google, right? You Google it, you will get it. Now, yeah. And he decided to remain until everything was over. An hour later, he went upstairs again, noted the progress made, came down once more, sat by the kitchen fire. So he was very dutiful. He was very dutiful towards his patient, towards his case, towards the work he has been offered. So he went, he inquired, he made sure things are fine. It was still, except for the rustle of a cinder in the grate and the slow tick tock of the wall. Otherwise, you will never hear the tick tock of a watch or a clock. Only during the night, when everything is still, you can hear minute sounds which during the daytime you will seldom hear. For example, tick tock of your clock, of the watch, you understand? Some creepers, some insects, the noises they make. Nighttime, when everything is silent, even a smallest of the sound will what? Echo. You can hear that. So, except the rustle of a cinder is that, um, insect, it will make that rustling sound which can be heard during the night. No, there was another sound, the beat of Morgan's footstep. So, apart from this, there was one more sound, and undeniably, it was the sound of Morgan's footstep. You cannot deny the fact. The doctor could, decipher the sound very clearly that it was of the footstep of Mr. Morgan, who must be walking restlessly in tension in the street below. Morgan's footsteps as he paced in the street out. Okay, as he paced in the pacing means when people walk, they are nervous. Many people walk, they are tense, they keep on walking to and fro. So it is known as pacing. As he paced in the street outside, the old woman opposite him sat in her black dress. The old woman was sitting in her black dress. In foreign countries, mostly old women, they have a wave, they wear black and all those things are more popular. Quite motionless, her eyes strangely alive and wise, probing, never leaving his face. So the old woman sat opposite. Her eyes were very lively, and all the time the eyes were just questioning the doctor. You understand? The eyes was very inquiring type. The doctor, are the things going well? So that was the expression in her eyes. The eyes speaks for themselves. Eyes speaks for themselves. It happens. His thoughts were heavy and muddled. Whose thoughts? Doctors. The doctor's thoughts were heavy and muddled. Muddled means, confused. His thinking was not very clear. At times it happens with people when they are so tired, when they do not catch up on sleep. So people are very tired. The episode he had witnessed at Cardiff station still obsessed him morbidly. So, the episode he had witnessed, so he might have witnessed something somewhere which was troubling his mind, something he might have seen. Now, what he has seen, let us see whether it is mentioned in the chapter or not. He thought of Bramwell foolishly devoted to a woman who deceived him sordidly, of Edward Page, bound to the shrewish Bloodwen, of Denny, living unhappily apart from his wife. His reason told him that all these marriages were dismal failures. It was a conclusion which his present state made him wince. He wished to consider marriage as an idyllic state. Yes, he could not otherwise consider it with the image of Christian before him. Now, see, he just had a breakup with someone, with his girlfriend. So, he was contemplating. Contemplating means thinking. Another word for thinking is contemplate. You understand? He was very in a pensive mood. Pensive means he was thinking very deeply. It's known as he was thinking, he was in a very pensive, pensive, pensive mood. Contemplate. Contemplate. He was vegetating. And vegetating means too much unnecessary thinking. We call it vegetating upon something. So, what he was thinking was, he was trying to recall all those examples of unsuccessful marriages where people were ruined because of the infidelity of their wives, because of the infidelity, because of infidelity means because of the untrustworthy behavior of their wives. When wives were not, you know, what you can say, in tune with their husbands, and because of that, the husbands were ruined. Okay, so he realized that marriages are a very successful marriages are very rare, and rarely such marriages can be found. You understand? And if he finds it in his life that his marriage to be successful, then Christine should not be there in the scene. It could never have been, solemnized with Christine. What is the name? Christine or something else? Yeah, Christian. So he cannot imagine an ideal marriage for himself with Christian. He arrived at that conclusion while he was, waiting for attending the patient. He wished to consider marriage as an idyllic state. Yes, he could be. So somehow he was losing faith in the institution of marriage. We say that marriage is an institution. Institution of marriage is an institution in which two parties they promise to be a part of the institution. When they enter the institution of marriage, we do not say people marry. What we say in better English, that two parties they enter the institution of marriage. You understand? So imagine after a couple of years, Sahil will be bestowing upon me his marriage, invitation. So I'll be asking, so Sahil, finally you have decided to enter the institution of marriage. You understand? So Sahil will say, sir, I never decided to. It's my parents who forced me to enter the institution. You saw how English will weave itself, how language will, give way to ideas. Yes? Okay. So I will say, okay, I will be there to bless you on the day when your marriage will be solemnized. When the marriage will be solemnized. solemnized, S or ZED. Anyway, so now our the protagonist, who was the protagonist? Dr. Andrew. He was slowly losing trust in the institution of marriage. Now, he never imagined Christian before him to fulfill his what? If he ever take a vow of marriage, it will not be a successful one if it has to be with Christian. So her eyes shining towards him admitted no other conclusion. It was the conflict between his level, doubting mind and his overflowing heart which left him resentful and confused. So his heart left him resentful. In some corner of his heart, there still may be little feeling for Christian. In the another corner, he might be hurt by Christian's behavior. You understand? In some other corner, he may have his own ideas about marriage and ideal marriage. So he was in a mixed state of emotion, mixed emotional state, isn't it? So Aditya is all the time in the same state only. Is it like that? Okay. Your daddy will throw you out of the house if he comes to know you are in the state, in that very state in which Andrew is. He let his chin sink upon his chest. Sometimes, people are, in a sleepiness, they will somehow like this. Yes or no? The chin will sink against the chest. They are sitting on the chair, they are feeling sleepy like this, the chin will, or they will be like this. Stretched out his leg. They will stretch out the leg and sleeping on the chair. Many people, they find it difficult, but they are helpless. Stared broodingly into the fire. So he was feeling sleepy, but he was not able to sleep also. He could not sleep also. So the best thing is he found was somehow he settled his chin on his chest and he was seeing the fire in front of him in the kitchen. In olden times, there used to be fire in the kitchen. It was not, gas or induction cooker and such things in LPG. No. So the fire was made out of wood or charcoal. It was like that. So fireplace was there, and they had big chimneys on the terraces of old buildings. You will find still chimneys made for the air to polluted, the smoke to escape. Chimneys were there. Now, yeah, he stared broodingly into the fire. He remained like this so long. He could not say how long he remained that way, but he remained like that so long. Yes, and his thoughts were so filled with Christian, he was not able to shrug Christian out of his heart, out of from his brain. Okay, Christian, the thoughts of Christian had empowered the or empowered our protagonist. So, and his thoughts were so filled with Christian that he started when the woman opposite suddenly addressed him. That he startled. I think here the word should be, there's a misprint, that he startled. That he startled, corrected, STARTLED. Startled means chonk jana. That he was startled when the woman opposite suddenly addressed him. Her meditation had pursued a different course. Her meditation had pursued a different course. Susan said not to give her the chloroform if it would harm the baby. Now see, now I don't know who said this sentence, but the doctor heard this. That Susan said not to give her the chloroform. See, now what happens? Whatever the mother will eat or whatever will happen to mother will be passed on to the child. Many times, even during childbirth, a problem occurs to the child because of the problems with the mother. So Susan said not to give her the chloroform. Patient's name must be Susan. Yes, chloroform, not to take chloroform. So Susan said not to give her chloroform if it would harm the baby. If it will harm the baby, then not to give her chloroform. She can bear the pain. Now she is a full set upon this child. So the lady told doctor she is so a full set, means she is ready to give her life for the baby that is yet to come in this world. She is so set on this baby. Dr. Bash, her old eyes warmed at a sudden thought. She added in a low tone, we all are, I fancy. We all are, I fancy. Okay. Now she said, the lady said, see, someone is going to be, for the first time, that woman must be going to be a mother, that too after a span of 20 years of marriage. It's really a big expectation, and how eagerly they may be waiting for their first child. So she was completely set on that child. Her life was that child. So she never wanted any untoward thing should happen to the child. Imagine the expectation of the parents. You understand? So the lady adds up that doctor, what she is thinking is very true also. That she is going to expect a child and nothing should happen to the child. And we all want the child to be safe and intact. He collected himself with an effort. I won't do any harm, it won't do any harm, the anesthetic. He said kindly, they will be all right. So doctor said, see, anesthetic will not do you any harm. Anesthetic will not create any harm either. It's safe for the mother also and for the child also. So rest, be assured of that. Now they will be all right. Here the nurse's voice was heard calling from the top landing. Andrew glanced at the clock. So all of a sudden he could hear the nurse shouting for the doctor. So he glanced at the watch. Oh, what's the time? So which now showed 3:30. 3:30 सुबह का हो चुका था. 3:30. He rose and went up to the bedroom. He perceived that he might now begin his work. So he got a notion that now he can begin his work. Now the exact time has come, it seems. Now, here the nurse's voice was heard, an hour elapsed. But then, after 3:30 also, an hour elapsed. It was a long, harsh struggle. Okay, it was a long struggle. Then, as the first streaks of dawn strayed, the first streak of dawn, the coming of the first streak of dawn, straight past the broken edges of the blind. Blind means, the curtain. The curtain is many a times referred as blind. Okay, to blind the light. So, edges of the blind, the child was born lifeless. Imagine, with the first streak of dawn, the child was born, and the child was born lifeless. Imagine what a disaster it would be for the entire family, the emotional trauma the mother would feel if she will know that out of her 20 years of expectation for a child, when she did have a child, the child was born lifeless. Nothing can be more sadder than this. Nothing can be more sadder. Absolutely nothing. As he gazed at the still form, a shiver of horror passed over Andrew. Imagine, doctor also knew the history of the family, that this couple was expecting a child since a long time. And he is the doctor who is to administer the childbirth. And then, a big question mark would have come on his own self. He himself would have thought that, am I a good doctor? I was not able to, successfully administer this childbirth. Again, and imagine, already he was in a emotional turmoil. And it was like, going from frying pan into the fire. It was like going from frying pan into the fire. Imagine that it was a task that he undertook, and he helped in the childbirth, but the child was born lifeless. No one will believe it, that it was not a doctor's, carelessness. No one will believe that it is not a doctor's carelessness. Are you getting me? Yes. No one will believe that it is not the doctor's carelessness. Means they will think that it is the doctor's fault. Any doctor will think, because that lady is motionless already, midwife, what she will understand? No one will understand this. Imagine the moral, turpitude in which he was in at that moment. After all that he had promised, he had comforted the family, that don't worry, I will be there. I will take care of all this. And you see, at the end of the day, it seems that something else was in store for him. His face, heated with his own exertions, chilled suddenly. So he himself was working hard. It was not that he was not attentive. He did his best. In spite of his best foot forward, he was an unsuccessful doctor in this case. So suddenly his otherwise he was very warm with, and he must be sweating by his, exertion. And then, his face was chilled. Okay. He hesitated, torn between his desire to attempt to resticate the child, to again somehow revive the child. He tried his level best, but he could not do anything. And his obligation towards the mother, who was herself in a desperate state. The mother was senseless. During childbirth, they don't have any sense in the way, because, all those things, very difficult. The dilemma was so urgent, he did not solve it consciously. The dilemma was so, urgent, that what to do now? The child is born lifeless. Blindly, instinctively, he gave the child to the nurse. He just checked upon the child. The child was lifeless. So, instinctively, he just gave that lump of flesh. It was just like a lump of flesh, maas ka lothada. He just handed the dead child to the nurse. that you just somehow you manage what to do with this lifeless thing. Gave the child to the nurse and turned his attention to Susan Morgan, who now lay collapsed. The mother lay collapsed, almost pulseless. He could not find her pulse even. That means, even the mother was in danger. Nothing could be said. And not yet out of ether upon her side. Ether means, that chloroform is referred as ether. So she was under the effect of ether. She was under the effect of ether, and she herself was senseless, motionless, and even pulseless. So doctor just observed it and he was scared that he need to save the mother as well. His haste was desperate, a frenetic race against her ebbing strength. It took him only an instant to smash a glass ampoule and inject the medicine. See, glass, the injections. We don't say bottle, we call it ampoule. You have seen injection bottles? Now we do not call injection bottles. We say one ampoule, two ampoule. Give me two ampoule of tetanus vaccine. So ampoule. So there may be some life-saving medicines of which the doctor was aware of, and of which was given to the patients during childbirth. So he immediately administered the injection to her. What did he do? We don't say giving the injection. He administered the medicine. See, when we use the word medicine, never say that you give medicine. You administer the medicine to a child. You administer the injection. So, you understand the good English. Administer. There are some words that will go hand in glove with some other words. They are used together. It has become a common trend in English. If you use some other word, that thing will not come. Now, glass ampoule and inject the medicine. Then he flung down the hypodermic syringe. Hypodermic. Dermis means skin. Now the injection, the needle that will go through the skin. That has to be going inside the skin. Hypodermic syringe, and work sparingly to restore the flaccid woman. That woman was lifeless. Okay. When people go lifeless, they go unconscious, they will just become more heavy because they cannot manage their own weight. You understand? They become flaccid, known as flaccid, lifeless. Okay. After a few minutes of feverish effort, her heart strengthened. So doctor, he was administering medicine. He must be, whatever way he knew to revive women in such conditions during childbirth. He could feel gradually the pulse coming back. Okay, the pulse which has completely gone, he could feel it was weakly coming up. Her heart strengthened. He saw that he might safely leave her. Then the doctor realized that now the mother could be left on her own because he had revived her. He swung around in his shirt sleeves, his hair sticking to his damp brow. When you go for jogging, walking, you will see sweat on your face. Sweat will be dripping from your hair. Sweat will be on your brow. You understand? So, he was trying to wipe away his sweat from the brow. He swung round in his shirt sleeves, his hair sticking to his damp brow. Now the hair from his head was falling in front of his face and it was sticking because of sweat. It happens. Now, where's the child? The mother might have asked, where the child? God knows who asked, where's the child? The midwife made a frightened gesture. She had placed it beneath the bed. Now, doctor had asked, where is the child? Where is the child? Now, by the time midwife had also realized that the child has born lifeless. So, she might have kept it under the bed. She might have wrapped it in some, tattered clothes or some paper, and she might have considered it as a garbage now. See, the midwife made a frightened gesture. She had placed it beneath the bed. She had kept the child underneath the bed, just as a discarded garbage. In a flash, Andrew knelt down. He knelt down the bed. He took out the child, maybe, fishing amongst the sodden newspapers. Sodden means, the newspapers that are wet. Wet newspapers. Okay. Wet newspapers soaked with water, soaked with, okay, below the bed. He pulled out the child, and then Andrew pulled the child out from under the bed. A boy perfectly formed. Now, the shape of that lump of flesh was, it was a boy. It was a baby boy. Perfectly formed. Hands and legs and fingers and nose and ears, everything was perfectly formed. The limp, warm body was white and soft as tallow. Tallow means, in Hindi we call it like wax, मोम. मोम की तरह वो एकदम लाइफलेस था, वाइट था, और उसी तरह से हो गया था. The cord hastily slashed lay like a broken stem. The cord, umbilical cord, umbilical. It is umbilical, umbilical cord. The cord that connects the placenta with the mother. So, umbilical cord. So the umbilical cord was slashed and lay like a broken stem. The skin was of lovely texture. The skin, a baby, you observe, the baby of any animal will look lovely. Any, whether it's a monkey's baby or a pig's baby or a cow's baby or a dog's baby or a cat's, any baby of any animal will look very lovely. Only when they grow up, they become, they look monsters and they look, cruel and whatever. Okay. Now, the skin was of lovely texture, smooth and tender. The skin was very smooth, very tender. The head lolled on the thin neck, lolled, ऐसे लुढ़क जा रहा था, कोई कंट्रोल नहीं था. इट लॉर्ड ऐसे ढरक जा रहा था क्योंकि द चाइल्ड वॉज लाइफलेस. द हेड लॉर्ड ऑन थिन neck. Neck was very thin. Naturally, babies, you see, head will be little bigger, neck will be thin. Small babies, they can't move their head properly, you know that, because head's weight is the maximum. Our head's weight is the maximum when it comes to the ratio of other parts of the body. Now the limbs seemed boneless. The limbs means hands, legs. It seemed there is no bones because the child was lifeless. Still kneeling, Andrew stared at the child with a haggard frown. Haggard means, those people who do not wear good clothes, they have never taken bath, they have worn, in Hindi we say एकदम दरिद्र, है ना, श्रीहीन. तो उसका गेटअप भी तो श्रीहीन ही था, पसीने से चूर हो गया था, कपड़े और डॉक्टर के खुद खराब हो चुके थे. हैगर्ड लग रहा था. हैगर्ड मतलब जो स्मार्ट नहीं दिखे, बेतरतीब जो दिखे, उसको बोलते हैं हैगर्ड. यू अंडरस्टैंड? आई सॉ ए हैगर्ड वुमन ऑन द रोड, गोइंग ऑन द रोड. हैगर्ड मीन्स एकदम चिथड़ों में. सो विथ ए हैगर्ड फ्राउन. हैगर्ड लोग जिस तरह से शक्ल बनाए रहते हैं, उसी तरह से डॉक्टर ने उस बच्चे को देखा. द वाइटनेस मेंट ओनली वन थिंग, एस्फेक्सिया पैलिडा. तो ये कुछ टेक्निकल जो उसने पढ़ाई की थी डॉक्टर ने, डॉक्टर को बात समझ में आई. नर्स ने तो उसको लाइफलेस समझ लिया था, बिस्तर के नीचे डाल दी. डॉक्टर को बात समझ में आई कि जो वाइट है ना, दैट इज अ मेडिकल कंडीशन, एस्फेक्सिया पैलिडा. एंड हिज माइंड unnaturally tense raced back to a case he once had seen in the Samaritan, to the treatment that had been used. अब he recalled, he has a case he had seen. इसी तरह की घटना इसी डॉक्टर ने पहले एक जगह देखी थी, जहाँ एक बच्चा जन्म लिया था और लाइफलेस लिया था, लेकिन वहाँ डॉक्टर ने उसको रिवाइव किया. तो जो स्ट्रैटेजी वहाँ यूज़ की थी डॉक्टर ने, ये डॉक्टर वही स्ट्रैटेजी यहाँ यूज़ करना चाह रहा था. क्या उसने किया? इंस्टेंटली ही वॉज ऑन हिज फीट. गेट मी हॉट वाटर एंड कोल्ड वाटर। वो चिल्लाया, एक एकदम उबलता हुआ पानी लाओ और एकदम ठंडा पानी लाओ, जल्दी लाओ। एक बाल्टी में गर्म पानी, एक बाल्टी में ठंडा पानी, एकदम बर्फ की तरह। ही थ्रू आउट टू द नर्स, जल्दी करो, एंड बेसिन्स टू, क्विक, जितनी जल्दी हो सके, एकदम टाइम नहीं वेस्ट करो। बट डॉक्टर, शी फेल्टर्ड, हर आईज ऑन द पैलिड बॉडी ऑफ द चाइल्ड। बट डॉक्टर, ये तो नहीं रहा, दैट मस्ट बी द एक्सप्रेशन, यू अंडरस्टैंड? So, quick, he shouted, quick, do not waste your time, quick. Snatching a blanket, he laid the child upon it and began the special method of respiration. You know, special method of respiration, मुंह में भी फूंक के सांस देना और वो सब, doctor started doing it. The basins arrived, the ewer, the big iron kettle. Frantically, he splashed cold water into one basin, into the another. He mixed water as hot as his hand could bear. As hot as his hand could bear. He checked the temperature. Then you know what did he do? Then like some crazy juggler. Juggler मतलब क्या? ऐसे people like circus में जैसे ये duster है. This duster, jugglers they do like this. This is juggling. What I did is juggling. So he just took up the baby. He frantically put it in one basin. Then hot water. Then cold water. And those who were seeing, they will be so shocked to see that he is doing cruelty on the child that is no more. People may be thinking that what madness the doctor is doing. So he hurried the child between the two, now plunging it into the icy, now into the steaming bath, steaming hot and icy. छपाक से इस पानी में, इधर इस बेसिन में, फिर गरम, एकदम तेजी से डॉक्टर करने लगा, बदहवास की तरह। So 15 minutes passed and he kept on doing. Imagine 15 minutes passed, 15 full minutes. Sweat was now running into Andrew's eyes. Many a times you might have felt very salty sweat going in your own eyes, and you cannot open your eyes because of the pain. When your salty sweat goes in your own eyes, it brings pain to the eyes. Blinding hip, and sometimes you cannot see because of your own sweat going inside your own eyes. One of his sleeves hung down, dripping, and one of his sleeves of his hand hung down, dripping with sweat. His breath came pantingly. He was panting because he was working hard. Imagine he was doing it for 15 minutes, splashing the baby from one basin to another. But no breath came from the lax body of the child. Lax means, lifeless body. No hope, nothing. A desperate sense of defeat pressed on him. A desperate sense of defeat took over him. A raging hopelessness. Now, ultimately, doctor, he lost hope. After 15 minutes of real hard work, when he found that there is nothing going to happen in this child, he could not see a ray of hope. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. He was about to be hopeless. He felt the midwife watching him in stark consternation. Now, midwife could not believe her eyes that what madness the doctor is doing. While there, pressed back against the wall where she had all the time remained, her hand pressed to her throat. Her hand was pressed to her throat. She was so surprised by seeing doctor's behavior. She might never have witnessed such a scene. Uttering no sound, her eyes burning upon him, was the old woman. He remembered her longing for a grandchild. Then, doctor saw that grandma to that child. She wanted a grandchild as great as had been her daughter's longing for this child. All dashed away now, futile, beyond remedy. Beyond remedy. So, doctor was feeling so sad that he could not meet his purpose as a doctor. You understand? He was there to assist and to successfully, what will be the right expression? Successfully, give way to childbirth through under his administration. So he was feeling very sad. The floor was now draggled mess. See, the floor will be naturally everywhere, there will be mess, fallen water and all those things. Stumbling over a sopping towel. Sopping means, wet towel, it was dripping. Andrew almost dropped the child, and then Andrew almost dropped the child, which was now wet and slippery in his hand, like a strange white fish. The child was like a white fish in his hands. And the child became very slippery also, because all those things. For mercy's sake, doctor, whimpered the midwife, it's stillborn. So, doctor, please, for mercy's sake, leave the child now. It is stillborn, means it is not yet born. He is dead. You understand? It is stillborn. He is not, he is lifeless. Now leave him. Andrew did not heed her, but Andrew did not hear her. Okay. Beaten, despairing, having labored in vain for half an hour, he still persisted in one last effort. But Andrew was not willing to hear anything and anyone. He saw the faces of that old lady. He realized, he saw the mother of the child. So he was not willing to give up. Okay, he thought of making one last effort. So, in one last effort, rubbing the child with a rough towel. Now, we start rubbing the child with a rough towel, crushing and releasing the little chest with both his hands. With both the hands, he was pressing the chest, trying to get breath into the limp body, and he was trying to get in breath into the limp body. And then, as a miracle, the pygmy chest, pygmies are in that Sahara desert. They are very, aborigines. Aborigine means the native people, aborigines. ABO, aborigines of the Sahara desert, SAHARA. So the aborigines are very small in size. Okay, in the desert, these are the real aborigines of Sahara desert, the pygmies. They are very, short statured. So even the fully grown up will be only of this height. So imagine how small the babies will be. So the expression came the pygmy chest. The small child and the chest was also very small. The pygmy chest, okay, where it was the pygmy chest which his hands enclosed, gave a short convulsive heave. So something pushed he could feel a thrust from the chest. Means someone was trying to breathe. The child was trying to breathe. He could feel his hands. He could feel another and another. Andrew turned giddy. Andrew, out of happiness, out of imagine the child which was lifeless with him, he was struggling from half an hour. Imagine life coming from him. How the doctor must be feeling. You understand how happy the doctor, he became giddy. And the sense of life springing beneath his fingers after all that unavailing striving was so exquisite. Nothing can be more happier for a doctor than this moment. The moment that he saved a life, which otherwise would not have been saved. He was declared a lifeless child by others. Even doctor realized, but he never gave up. And thanks to him that, life came back to that child. Imagine the greatness of such doctors. Country, world needs such devoted doctors. Otherwise, who will work hard? You see doctors, they just see, ये तो मरा पैदा हुआ, हटाओ इसको. This is what doctors nowadays, they do. I will tell you an incident I read in the newspaper after I complete this. And I have given when I taught this chapter a couple of years back, that clipping of the paper must be in my file somewhere. I will give you also. Okay, then you will realize what is happening. Now you see, springing beneath his fingers after all that unavailing striving was so exquisite it almost made him faint. He redoubled his effort feverishly. He redoubled when he saw some hope. He redoubled his effort. He kept on, trying to revive the child. The child, the child, like this, he was gasping. The child started gasping for breath. The child was gasping now, deeper and deeper. A bubble of mucus bubble came out from one tiny nostril. See, the child is in the mother's womb, so there is liquid and all those things. Okay, placenta and liquid and all those. So liquid sometimes goes in the nose. Many complications are during childbirth. Many complications. You understand? Sometimes the umbilical cord will be tied around the neck, and that will press the throat of the child, and child will become unconscious. You understand? So it is like that. Very complication, because child keeps moving inside mother's womb. So cord will be what? Strengthening the neck, strangling the neck, and people succumb. The child succumbs. The child succumbs to death. SUCCUMB. Succumb. Use the word succumb. English should be learned in English. So succumb. So yeah, a bubble of mucus came from one tiny nostril. I am sure sometimes bubbles come out from your nose also. When you have enough of cough, you see नाक छिनकने जाता पहले बबल फूटता है. ऐसा हुआ है कितने लोगों ने देखा? Be honest. उसके बाद वो पूरा निकलता है ना? Many of you might have observed. हाँ हाँ, अभी तो नो. अकेले में जब निकले ना बड़ा सा बबल, तब उसका स्नैप लेना. ठीक है. सो हाँ, ऐसे जब बबल निकल जाए, बहुत आप देखोगे बहुत छोटे बच्चों का. Thank God, now you are awake, all of you. Now you are listening to me. So let us leave the bubble as Shivani told. Let us get rid of it. Okay. So now you are back to the classroom. Back in the classroom. Okay. Now the child was gasping now, deeper and deeper. A bubble of mucus came from one tiny nostril, not both the nostrils, only one. Some of you are actually imagining a big bubble from one tiny nostril. Bubble is bigger than the face of the child. A joyful, iridescent bubble. Joyful bubble. Otherwise, no one will like a bubble from the nose. Arey, this is in the chapter. A.J. CRONIN has written what he must be feeling. You understand? Let us appreciate the description of the bubble. That's about the child. The bubble came from the child, from one tiny nostril. So, okay. Where were we? So now you are feeling bad. No, you may never know that you may get a mother-in-law with two bubbles from both the nostrils, and you will have to help your mother-in-law in that. Then you will be finished. Now focus here. So the limbs were no longer boneless. The limbs were no longer boneless. Now forget your mother-in-law and focus here. The limbs were no longer boneless. The head no longer lay back spineless. See, people or some creatures who do not have spine, body will be limp. You can't, pick them up. Can you think of any such creatures? There are creatures with, vertebrates, invertebrate. You have heard about that? Vertebrate. So there are creatures, the fish have backbone and bones. Okay, there are some creatures without backbone. So it's very difficult to lift them because weight is not distributed evenly. Think. Snakes. Okay, snake you can say, but snake also have bones. Anyway, this is not a biology class. Let's focus here. So the blanched skin was slowly turning pink. The blanched means, it became white. Blanched means, sometimes you bleach something or blanched. Okay, so completely white. Was slowly turning pink. Then exquisitely came the child's cry. And then we could they were able to hear the golden voice of the child. The child started crying. Imagine the happiness that would have, crept over the entire house, entire household. Dear Father in heaven, the nurse sobbed hysterically. It's come alive. So, dear Father, oh God, we are lucky the child came alive. Imagine when we in the class can feel so happy listening to this story. Imagine in reality how happy the whole family would have been, how happy the doctor would have become. So, Andrew handed her the child. Andrew handed her the child. Take the child now. Now he's alive. Now he felt weak and dazed. Andrew felt, Andrew must be so tired. He must be, even not be able to stand properly because of the tiresome work he did, because of he was not able to sleep the entire night, because of his own psychological unhappiness. But this happiness would have overcome everything, isn't it? The happiness that he has tasted, the happiness of success, the happiness of bringing life to someone. So he felt weak and dazed. About him, the room lay in a shuddering litter. Litter means हर तरफ चिथड़ा पड़ा हुआ, गंदगी फैली हुई है. रूम भी वैसा ही था. ब्लैंकेट्स, टॉवल्स, बेसिन्स, सॉइल्ड इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स, गंदा है ना, औजार एकदम गंदे हो रखे थे. द हाइपोडर्मिक syringe impaled by its point in the linoleum. The ewer knocked over. The kettle on its side in a puddle of water. लग रहा था पूरा कैटास्ट्रॉफ, एक chaos है, हर चीज बेतरतीब इधर उधर गिरी पड़ी. Upon the huddled bed, the mother still dreamed her way quietly through the anesthetic. You understand? मुझे आज भी याद है, मैं अपने एक दोस्त से मिलने गया था. उसको ऑपरेशन से बहुत डर लगता था, डॉक्टर से डर लगता था. तो उसका अपेंडिक्स का ऑपरेशन था और उसका ऑपरेशन हो गया था. उसे ऑपरेशन थिएटर से बाहर निकाला जा रहा था और वो यही बुदबुदा रहा था कि पापा ये लोग कह रहे हैं ऑपरेशन आज नहीं होगा. उसका ऑपरेशन हो चुका, अपेंडिक्स निकल चुका, लेकिन वो बुदबुदाते हुए निकल रहा, पापा डॉक्टर बोले ऑपरेशन कल होगा, आज नहीं होगा. यू अंडरस्टैंड? सो यू आर स्टिल ड्रीमिंग. हो सकता है एनेस्थीसिया देते समय उसका डर मिटाने के लिए डॉक्टर ने कहा हो अरे ऑपरेशन आपका कल करेंगे. सो वी हैव टू कंफर्ट, डॉक्टर्स कंफर्ट द पेशेंट्स. सो कुछ भी बड़बड़ाते हैं लोग बेहोशी की अवस्था में. ओके. So her way quietly through the anesthetic, and it takes quite some time to bring the brain to senses. It takes some time to come back to one's senses. Coming back to senses. All right. So the old woman still stood against the wall. But her hands were together. Her lips moved without sound. She was praying. The old woman was praying. Mechanically, Andrew wrung out his sleeve, he wrung out his sleeve, pulled his jacket. I will fetch my bag later, nurse. Now he was not in a condition to carry his heavy bag. So he told nurse, I will manage that someone should reach my bag later on. Now I am leaving. I am leaving for my house. He went downstairs through the kitchen into the scullery, a room for washing dishes for similar work. जहाँ बर्तन मांजा जाता है, scullery. His lips were dry. At the scullery, he took a long drink of water. He reached for his hat and coat. Outside, he found Joe standing on the pavement with a tense, expectant face. So outside, he found Joe. Joe was very tense. What happened? Doctor Sahab, kya hua? All right, Joe, he said thickly. Both all right. But it was only those who were indoors who saw the rigors of childbirth, who saw what mishap was going to take place. You understand? Joe had not witnessed all this. Doctor and midwife and Mrs. Andrew had seen what took place inside. So he told both are all right. It was quite light, nearly 5 o'clock, when the ordeal got over. Ordeal, when the ORDEAL, when the entire movie got over, the entire hard work got over. A few miners were already in the streets. It must be a mining town, है ना, कहीं कोयले का खदान रहा होगा, सारे माइनर्स वहाँ काम करते होंगे. The first of the night shift moving out, as Andrew walked with them, spent and slow, his footfalls echoing, his footfall, है ना, the footfall echoing with the others under the morning sky. He kept thinking blindly, oblivious to all other work. Oblivious means forgetful of all other work he had done in blindly. I have done something, oh God, at least I have done something in life. That satisfaction the doctor has got. One life is very important, very, very important. Oh God, I have done something real at last. I am a doctor and at least I did something in life, and this will be a matter of satisfaction for me for my entire life. So, good doctors, they always find ways to help their patients and they walk an extra mile. They don't shy away from going to any extremes if it has to do good to their patient. So I want, it's not only the field of medicine. You be any field. Okay, you try to do best, try to give in, try to do your work with responsibility. Don't somehow try to fulfill the work. You may never know that your effort will save someone's life. Okay, so it was a very interesting chapter. We saw what dutifulness is all about. So I want all of my students, you also should be very dutiful in life towards your profession, whatever you will be joining in. And just like Dr. Andrew, you also have to be hardworking and true to your profession and true to your salts. So thank you all of you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir.